Hello, everybody. It's the Lawn Gnome, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Sit Downs, the show where anything goes and nothing gets left behind. And this is the second to last episode of the second season of Sunday Sit Downs. And I'm really excited for this one because of the fact that it's going to be an interesting conversation in terms of one's passion for doing what we do here on YouTube, but also a little bit more of a business concept, if you will, because the concept here is about niche marketing. And as someone who was a marketing major in college during his undergraduate years, it's something that I am still somewhat familiar with, even though I don't necessarily do that anymore. But I cannot be any more excited today because I have a fantastic guest, and I know what you're all gonna say. Lawn Gnome, why is Cammie from Cammie's Corner back on your channel? She's there too much. You're doing too much with her. Give me something new. Give me something exciting. Well, you know something, people? When things are great in terms of projects that you do with the people that you work with, there is no reason why you shouldn't have them come back as often as possible. So without further ado, I just want to say to Cammie, thank you once again for returning and being a part of my show today.
I am absolutely honored to be here for a Sunday sit down. You know, Steve, you and I have been friends for about a year and a half now, maybe a little bit longer. And this is the segment that I have fully anticipated, hoping someday you'd ask me to participate in. So I'm honored to do a Sunday sit down, and I'm just really excited to get into this topic. And just to preface, I am unprepared. I did not ask for the questions ahead of time. So I am going into this just as blind as your audience.
Well, at least let me get you feeling a little bit more pumped and positive, because congratulations, you are one of two people that has done the Lawn Gnome Triple Crown, which means you have been on all three of my live show segments. You have been on my Sunday sit downs, you have been on my DCAU updates, and you have been on Versus. So congratulations to you. You're one of two people that has actually done that.
That is also an honor, and I really appreciate that. I have so much fun when I'm on your channel. I mean, our collaborations are always so thought-provoking, and there's really a lot of fun and heart that goes into them. And so, you know, the only thing I feel like I didn't come prepared with today was some type of crown, you know, maybe just this whimsical, you know, the montage of pop culture on my head. But otherwise, I am honored. This is super cool.
Yeah, all right. So as I said, everybody, the conversation that we're going to have today is niche marketing, which is basically catering to a very specific group of viewers here in the community. To me, it's an interesting topic because as someone who tries to get his voice out there for as many people as he possibly can for the sake of being a positive force, for the sake of introducing people to new ideas, you know, I'd like to get my voice out there as much as possible. But then there are just some people that want to connect with their people because that's where they feel that they can bring the most insight and the most good things that they know, bring their true knowledge in things that makes them truly happy. And some people may think that that's a good idea and some may not, but we're going to figure out what are the highs and lows of doing such. So normally when I ask my first of 7 questions, we like to begin at the beginning, but not so much here because there's a different question that I want to hit you with first, Cammie, and that is, what are your overall thoughts on niche marketing, and do you have any professional background in the area?
So my personal thoughts on niche marketing have developed honestly over time, especially since I've been within the YouTube community. I always felt that someone should be able to present themselves in whatever forum makes sense to them. And for someone like myself who has a ton of different interests, I felt that was something that connected you and I as far as conversation in our beginning, you know, as we were developing our friendship. But I found that niche marketing is very important on this platform. I think that for me, because I have so many ideas and so many thoughts, I have a tendency to kind of let them get away from me. and it affects my overall performance. I become kind of a procrastinator in the sense that I feel that I don't ever fully accomplish something if I don't give myself kind of a stronghold, you know, where I'm looking at it from a perspective of, okay, let me be a subject matter expert in something. I always tell people when they meet me, you know, I am an endless source of useless information. But by that, I mean, I just like to verse myself in knowledge and be able to sit at a table with a plethora of different people from different backgrounds and be able to add something to the conversation, regardless of what that is, not necessarily being a subject matter expert. But I feel that it's important for you to find your niche. And so for me, going into this, it's been an evolving, you know, trying to figure out, is that important? And my answer to that is definitely yes now. I feel it's very important for you to find something that you feel not only drives your interest and your passions, but it's something that you can put yourself into and be able to be well versed. So when people come to you, whether it be your channel or to your home, or when they're looking you up for advice or suggestions, they can trust in your opinions and know that the facts, there's some truth behind it, that you've done your research, that you've vested in that. So I think on this particular platform, my niche is definitely horror. And I think that I have captured that in a way now where I feel very confident and comfortable saying that that is truly my label and my niche.
Okay. Well, as for me, as I said to you, I actually do have a marketing background. So when I first came onto YouTube, that's sort of where I was approaching it. Not necessarily as just someone who was just turning on a camera and figuring out, you know, what he wanted to do. I sort of had a game plan, and my game plan came with the concept of catering to people. I mean, I absolutely understand where you come from in terms of a specific niche. I mean, while my discussions that I have on my channel or the topics that I bring to the table are niche to a certain degree, I would say that they're definitely more general, because movies is vast. You know, music is vast. Funko Pops could be a little bit more niche, if you will. But I also feel that in terms of niche marketing for myself, it's where I basically take a specific concept and I create more granular level series of videos, if you will. Like, I have my Out of the Vault series, which is specifically dedicated to Disney. So people who may not be fans of classic films or drama films, but just love the magic of Disney, they'll gravitate to one specific section on my channel, so to speak. So I definitely agree with you in terms of a niche and really trying to find a set group of people that connect with you, understand you, and of course appreciate your content. But we'll get a little bit further into where I personally feel those setbacks could be. So now let's finally begin at the beginning. So when you recreated your YouTube channel, was focusing on a certain area your main goal right out of the gate, or did it just take a little bit of time for you to figure out exactly what you wanted to be in this community?
Well, when I initially had started my channel, I mean, if you've been here for a while, I know that you're very familiar with this, Steve, but if viewers knowing me and having watched my channel know that my intent was not to start out in the niche that I've developed. I wanted to be a kids content channel, and that was something that I was very passionate about. I absolutely love the concept of story time with kids and bringing literature to children. I think it is so important. I think that kind of dichotomizing this family, I don't want to say image, because I know that the dynamic of family has changed so vastly over the course of time, and the definition of what family time equates to is so precious now, because there are multiple parents where they have double jobs, and there's not the same type of time that our parents spent with us for story time and so forth. So the concept going in was to kind of be that parent that could be there for the child when they come home for after school, to talk about books and to get kids interested in reading again. But after I started to kind of go with that, it's not that my love for middle grade and children's picture books and so forth has left me, but I don't feel that the market was there on the YouTube platform like I had anticipated. Kids are gravitating towards YouTube to watch other kids unpackage toys. And that's so disheartening to me in such a consumer-filled society that we live in. You know, not to say kids aren't reading, but it's just, it was harder for me to kind of grasp that audience. So I just felt myself kind of pushing myself towards my next greatest thing, and that was to find what made me the most passionate when it came to reading. And that's kind of where the whole horror community fell into my lap, and I didn't realize that it even existed. So for yourself, like you're saying, you got on and you kind of already had a strategy and an idea. For me, it has been a constant rebuilding, and I feel like sometimes I'm taking steps backwards, and it's frustrating at times because you ask yourself, am I making traction? Am I making a difference? Am I penetrating the community in any way? But just to get that one comment or that one person that says that I've turned them on to something new, or that I've made them look at horror in a different way, is it really means something to me. So I feel that I'm not 100% where I want to be, but I do feel that I have evolutionized my channel and myself, and I have become a different reader, a different reviewer. So in terms of change, I'm very happy with the success that I've made, and I still have changes to come.
Well, I definitely recall when I first found your channel that you were actually gearing towards children. And quite frankly, you know, a couple of months ago, I had Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany on, and we talked about being a YouTube parent. And I'm not a father just yet, but it's definitely something that I'm hoping for in the coming years. So it was nice to actually find out that there was someone out there that was actually talking about children's books, because obviously children's books are something that my house will, God willing, have in the coming years. But then again, when you're also the husband of a teacher, you know that that's inevitable. But what I found, but that was when we started to get to know each other. One of the few things that I personally saw was there was more to you than just talking about children's books. And I said to myself, and I never said this to you, but I'm going to let you know this now. I said to myself when I first met you, I said, this channel's going to change one day. I just have a feeling, because she is so much more interested in all the things that she liked from her childhood. I mean, for crying out loud, when I had you on that episode of Versus with Caleb and we discussed Ninja Turtles, you were like a kid in a freaking candy store. You were in your element. When we talk about Funko Pops, you talk about all those great things that you loved when you were a kid. And yes, the horror is definitely something that I see in your eyes as something that you truly love. And honestly, I feel that where you're going right now couldn't be the more perfect time, because even some of the mainstream booktubers right now are talking about horror books or elements of paranormal and monsters in the books that they're reading right now. Because I am seeing, I'll tell you this, a lot of booktubers are reading Stephen King right now. And maybe that's just because of the fact that it is such a spectacular smash at the box office. And I think that that's good, because you know, one of these days we're going to get that horror discussion out on your channel one day, and we're going to talk about the horror movie evolution and stuff like that. But yeah, even when I was having a game plan and knew that I just wanted to be someone that voiced his opinion about movies and music and other forms of popular culture, there were so many things that I decided later on that I never thought that I would do, because my goal was to just, you know, voice my opinion, get the comments, and that was it. You know, I never thought that I would have the eagerness to make something like a motivational moment, or actually reach out to members of the community and exchange ideas for the sake of positive people growing their own selves within the community. So that was a risk that I took. And, you know, it didn't make a massive impact, like the whole world hasn't changed because of the few acts that I've done, but that was never my goal in the long run anyway, because this whole platform was never my goal. This was never going to be my day job. This was just a passion project. And I never would have imagined that just being a little bit more vocal and reaching out and just gearing more selfless styles of video making rather than self-indulgent would actually be the type of person that I would be here in the community.
Well, and when I guess kind of started to make that gravitating change from a kids content channel to, I really wasn't sure what, because horror definitely didn't just slap me in the face. That was just a segment that I created that I thought it was only going to be just a portion of my channel. And then the traction and the communication and the commentary, it just really skyrocketed. So I thought, well, maybe I've got something here. You know, maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do instead. So I genuinely thought I was going to end up with a channel much like yours, where I was talking about more pop culture, because obviously, you know, my love for Funko Pops and movies and cartoons and nostalgia. So I thought that that would easily be something I could just steamroll into. But with the YouTube platform, it is so difficult to grow a channel when you are all over the map. You know, I mean, there are people that will genuinely watch you regardless. You know, so there are some people I'll watch, they can talk about burnt toast and it's just because it's them. I will go to their channel because I love listening to them and what they have to offer to
And they have a good image.
Talking about.
And their image and their presentation works as well.
Yeah, it's personality, it's, you know, the way that they bring facts into it, it's the way that they bring their own personal take on it, either you know, the things that they've gone through in life, you know. So I could have focused on that. I really could have brought all of this creation station that I call this world that I'm immersed in into that. But I chose to just take something that I could truly be passionate about and just do full on research for it. But when it comes to, you know, trying to find that connectivity, I just really wanted something that I could talk to people about and be fully versed. I wanted to finally be someone who was a subject matter expert. And I felt that the horror community was a good way to do that. And you mentioned that, you know, Stephen King is always a presence in the horror community. He is the king, for goodness sakes. I mean, with all intents and purposes, no pun on his name, but there is a reason why people love Stephen King. He is a masterful writer. He has a world that goes so many layers deep and characters that visit other stories that don't even have to do with the storyline. I mean, his masterful writing is one of a kind and it is timeless. So going into, you know, any new Stephen King movie or TV show or what have you, it's very common for people to want to be curious about Stephen King. I love that people are curious, but I found to be my kind of segue into my niche was finding those people that were afraid of horror, that only when they heard it thought of movies. I wanted people to realize that there were 30 subgenres of horror and there's more to horror than Stephen King. There is so much incredible storytelling to be had within horror. And I think that's what readers are recognizing now, is that horror isn't what they thought it might be. And there might just be something for you. And you didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's horror, it's thriller, it's suspense. There's so many subgenres of films and books that actually have a horror element in it that is not necessarily a jump scare, which is another thing that a lot of people always stereotype horror with, the concept of the jump scare. And some of the best horror films don't even have that. Speaking of horror films in general, we mentioned Stephen King for literature, but when I take a look at a lot of people in the film community, there's a lot of people right now that are seeing Alfred Hitchcock films and talking about those films because there's the master of suspense right there. So it's very healthy that we're seeing that growth. And quite frankly, I'm still waiting for the next live show that you do with Joni because I really do enjoy those as well. And I've been seeing her a lot on YouTube lately, so I'm hoping that you guys will be back together again.
Yeah, she had to take a quick break for work, but we are definitely, in terms of 2020, going to get back together. We're going to start up with our crime scene again. And she is a delight because she is, again, one of those rarities that I stumbled across in the YouTube platform. She, too, can talk about burnt toast, and I will tune in and listen to her because her reading tastes are so eclectic and she really gets immersed in the story. You know, it's so important for me to get involved in a story, and that's what I loved about her. So I just knew that she and I would be a great fit.
Yeah.
So that's a great point that you pulled her up because she's incredible. And
Stacy as well. Hopefully you and Stacy will work on some stuff as well. I mean, I definitely have some ideas that we need to do.
To work on stuff.
Yeah, she
It's very challenging to get to team up.
Yeah, but she wants to do that. Let me let you know. She wants to do these kinds of projects. She really does. So let's get into the third question. And this is where we're going to go a little bit more in regards to viewership. And that is, do you feel that when you're doing niche work here in the community, does it have a more positive or a more negative effect on you as a YouTuber in terms of views and subscribers?
I'm glad that you mentioned views and subscribers because I think going into the new year, that's something I'm going to focus less on. I think that we get so caught up in this community as to a number defining us, a subscriber number meaning that we're worthy in this community. And if even just one person subscribes to your channel, obviously you've done something right. Somebody has said, okay, this person is making content I want to watch. Of course, as a human being, I would be wrong to say on this side of, the camera to say that it's not important to watch your channel grow. That's why we do this. Why else would we create videos and put so much time and effort into the editing process, into creating these segments, if we didn't want to see our channel flourish? Everyone will tell you that. But the thing for me is not to focus on those numbers. Yes, it is important if you are within this community to have viewership in terms of monetization. But I never got involved in this community to make money. It wasn't something that I said, oh, I'm going to get on there and people are going to love me and they're going to want to watch my videos. I was just hoping to talk to some people about books because my friends in real life aren't readers, or at least at that time I didn't have myself surrounded with a lot of people who love to read. But now that I'm here, I don't want to focus on that anymore. That's not what's important. What's important is creating content that makes me happy. Because you had said something to that effect a few moments ago, is what you're putting together, part of your happiness? Is this something that you kind of identify with? Does the content that you put out spark something in you? And it does. And so I don't want to focus on numbers and where my analytics is going, because there's just so much of that conversation on the platform. We know what it takes if you want to be monetized. We know how many subscribers we need. We know how many watch hours. My thing is this: don't get wrapped up in a number. If people love what you're doing, if they love what you're offering the community, they will find you eventually. They'll either hear about you from someone else, and that to me is a huge compliment in and of itself. When someone shouts me out in a video and says, hey, you need to head over to Cammie's channel and check her out, that's saying, wow, that's cool that this person actually took the time to not only watch my content, but think my name was worthy to put out there for the platform. So that's super cool. So I want to ensure that for me, it's just making sure that I'm putting out quality content that people want to come back and see, and not focus on how many subscribers do I have and how many likes do I have, because that doesn't define me. If I'm getting views, that's what's important. And that's all I want to see, that number grow.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I've fallen into the trap many, many times. I mean, even right now, I am just so hell-bent on reaching 2,000 subscribers. But it's more so about the fact that I kind of really want to do like the ultimate shelf tour, because I did a shelf tour of my movies once, but I've been wanting to show my viewers everything. Like, I want them to see my collectibles. I want them to see my CDs. I want them to see all the Funko Pops in one place, like an ultimate series of shelf tours. But I really want to do that only if I reach a major milestone, something that is more of a gift to the people who made it possible. I feel that if I don't get to that level and do the shelf tour, I label myself a failure. It's the same reason that this year, I mean, one of the few things that you said earlier was about making content that makes you happy. You were the person that actually reached out to me and said, Steve, what's up with you? You're not bringing that passion and that fire to your content that you used to. What's happening? And you and I had a very long, deep conversation just about life in general, seeing what was going on. And I will not lie about the fact that these past year and a half have been a very strenuous time for me in terms of just making content, just because I've had so many other things to focus on. And there was a day where I was actually sitting in my car going to dinner with my wife and was just venting about how YouTube is just stressing me the hell out. And so she said, well, then why don't you just stop? And I said, because I made a goal to get to at least a decade's worth of content. If I literally just get onto YouTube right now, today, and tell everybody I'm done, I failed. I'm just like, when you set a goal out for yourself, I treat my channel like a television show. You have a decade's worth. That feels like such an accomplishment more than saying, oh, I've been on YouTube for 9 years. There's something more monumental about saying you had a channel and you were a constant creator of content for a decade. Who can actually, well, now there can be. There have been people that have been on YouTube for over a decade, but not many. Just think about how would you feel if you actually said to people, I had a YouTube channel for 10 years. People would call that a massive accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we are our biggest critics, regardless of what the platform is, we're going to be the hardest on ourselves. And absolutely, if I was in your shoes, I would definitely want to put that under my belt. But I think that we've all been there. I think that we all kind of reevaluate, especially as we look to change or make any changes, whether they're epic changes or just the slightest changes. And we have to continuously ask ourselves, why am I here? What am I doing this for? And I think as you are subjected to positivity, it makes it significantly easier to carry on and to, prevail. But I think that sometimes, if it's looking at your subscriber count, or if it's looking at your views, or if it's just in terms of putting content out there for the sake of putting content out there. I think a good example of that was Sam from Sam's Nonsense. She stepped away from the YouTube platform for 7 months. She just put out a video just yesterday, and I was so excited to see her on the platform again, but it was just a life update. And it doesn't matter. The fact is that she put herself out there again, and she's like, this is my channel. I'm going to do with it what I will. And she's been on the platform for like about 6 or 7 years. So she's, kind of in that same category where she is a veteran. And I love her content. I think she's incredible. She's, very fantasy and epic oriented. But again, this just shows you the dynamic of this platform, that we have developed friendships with people that aren't even in the same realm of the reading that we do, or even in the same content. I mean, I have friends that do makeup channels and all kinds of things, but the matter is supporting each other. And I think if you have that support team, regardless of what you face or how you feel, life is going to weigh you down sometimes. But if you have friends that are truly friends and there to support you, they'll tell you when they see it in your face. They'll tell you when they hear your tone, when you put out a video like, hey, what's up? Are you okay? And that to me is what makes this all worthwhile, is those friendships that I've developed and making those connections and talking to people who genuinely care about the content that I'm putting out there. They want to have these conversations with me. That is so cool.
Right. Absolutely. So let's get into the fourth question. Now, we tackled this a little bit, but let's expand on this specific area. You did try to take on multiple communities with your content, and you now have gone back to the concept of the niche. You started off with a certain niche, and then you branched out a little bit more, and then you did a different kind of niche. So what were your overall feelings about coming to those decisions? I mean, I pretty much think you answered that question in some shape or form, but let's really focus on the concept of going back to just focusing on one specific thing.
Initially, I was sad. I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to be honest in that regard. I'm not going to fabricate some kind of, it was perfect fit or whatever. I genuinely had hoped that people would embrace all the weirdness of me and all the things that I liked. And the truth is, I could have probably still continued to put out content like that. But the thing is again, you have to ask yourself, do I want to see my channel grow? And in order for me personally to have seen any growth in my channel, I felt the need to market in or hone in on one specific niche. And I just found the one that worked the best for me. But I love kids content. I still love, like I said, reading those books. So in 2020, I have found a way to bring kids content back to Cammie's Corner but in a dark way. So you will be seeing some more kids stuff on here. It will still be kids eccentric or kid friendly, because of course we know that now you have to mark your videos for kid content on here, which
Yeah.
kind of caused a little bit of an upheaval in the community. I don't know why. I think that
Yeah.
there's such beauty behind that. I mean, people need to understand that kids are so subjective to so many things. So it's going to take us 2 seconds to click a box to say, yes, a child should be watching this, or no, a child shouldn't be watching this. It's not challenging. And there, you know, there's still a way to incorporate all elements of who you are on your channel. You just have to know how to do it. I think for me, I did my channel much like I do my life. It's just a big old blot of everything that I am. And I think that can be overwhelming for people sometimes to figure out, why am I coming back to this channel? And like I said, you will have some viewers that will come back and they will watch you regardless of what you put out, because they just like who you are. But I think in terms of finding my niche, I just had to find something that I truly felt I could be a subject matter expert in, and something I genuinely wanted to expand on. And I was doing that naturally in my own world with horror, and, you know, exposing myself to new authors and new content. And so I thought, you know, this is something that I could genuinely share with people, and possibly look to bring more people to the horror community and liking to read horror books and not being afraid to try on something that they shied away from.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the whole thing with the kids' content, I'm going to agree with you 100%. I didn't understand why everyone flipped out because of that. I mean, yes, my content
No
is
sense.
definitely something that kids could watch, but my channel is not geared towards children. I am someone that is really trying to connect with people that are within my age range, maybe a little bit younger, but not necessarily kids. I mean, yes, I'm sure kids would love to see the Funko Pops. I'm sure that kids would love to see Disney stuff, but I don't think they want to see a guy in his 30s just talking about movies. This is not something that kids are interested in. So, you know, I just had to read it carefully. I think that's one of the things that people need to understand. You got to read things and understand what they're really trying to say. And when I actually saw that if you actually do, in fact, say that your content is geared towards children, your comments will no longer be able to be available to you. So there goes your feedback. So that's a bit of a disadvantage, but if you're showing your channel to kids, these kids don't even know how to type yet, most likely. So there really shouldn't be any skin off your back in regards to that. But no, I just don't think my stuff is really for children. My stuff is for adults. They can let their kids sit down and watch with them. But yeah, I mean, look, I throw out an F-bomb every now and again. I throw politics into my channel these days. A lot less than I used to when things were a little bit more heated, I will say. But one of the other things that I have noticed personally in some of the last few videos that I've done, particularly my update videos, I've gotten so many compliments when I talk about comic books. Apparently, I've struck a chord with some people, all because of the fact that I'm talking about comic books all of a sudden. Because yes, I just got back into collecting, and I get comment after comment basically saying, I can't get over how passionate you are about comics and these stories. But it's very hard as a collector to really focus on comic books on your videos, because you don't want to take them out of the bags. You want to keep them in the closet, in the comic box, because you're concerned about the collector's value. I mean, look, there was a comic book store that just opened up in my local shopping mall, Newberry Comics, and I just said to myself, let me go take a look. There's a comic book that I'm looking for right now. It's the 300th issue of Spawn. I'm 2 months late, but I said, yes, let me get it. There were 2 copies, but they were in crap condition. I am not picking those up. So I'm probably going to have to go to another store and just say, hey, do you have any extra copies of Spawn 300? Because I'd love to get my hands on that. As a matter of fact, one of my friends just got me a belated birthday gift. He got me a copy of Detective Comics 1000. That's a pretty cool thing, and it's the Frank Miller. So it's the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns cover. So that's something that's really cool to me. And I did actually order on eBay for a very inexpensive price, cover price, as a matter of fact. I got a copy of Action Comics 1000 the cover is drawn by Jim Lee, who's one of the best comic book artists from my youth and still doing that thing. He's coming, and that's coming in the mail in a couple of days. See, the passion's officially here now. You can see the passion in my comic book collecting, but it's so hard to bring it to the front on the camera because you're just so nervous about ruining your books.
Well, and honestly, I mean, I was about to comment on the passion that is evoking from within you right now, because that is truly it. You have to find that thing that makes you truly happy. And yes, there are times when I'll walk around this room, because this is my creation station. This is where all my color and my Disney and my kids' books and stuff are. My Funko Pops are kept in here. And I'll look around and I just find myself stopping and smiling and admiring all of these things that I've collected over the years. But in terms of talking about things, yes, I can do the same thing. I can sit down and talk to people about Alice in Wonderland and have that same kind of passion. Or as you stated before, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There are so many things that evoke passion within me. But in order for me to find my niche on YouTube, I had to find what's the one thing that can be evolving and ever changing. You can only talk about Alice in Wonderland and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in so many different ways and so many different platforms. But horror is continually being printed. New stories are being written as we speak. So that is a segue that I had, that I knew I can continue to make it fresh and new and inviting for people. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself or box myself in to one particular topic that was just going to kind of wash me out and wash out my audience. So that's how I came up with where I'm at now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on a couple of areas of that as well. So the next question that I have, we're going to flip it around a little bit, not necessarily about creating content. So as a niche content creator, how are you as a viewer? Do you stay within your own space, or do you like to actually branch out in terms of your viewership? And if that is the case, why people most likely will ask the question, well, if you watch so many different kinds of things, why do you only focus on one if you love so many other things? You know what I mean? And I'm sure that you get that question so many times. And I think it's a question that we should all try and answer.
Oh, absolutely. People always want to know, where do you get your facts from? What do you research? What do you spend your time doing, especially when you claim to be an aficionado of any given subject? And I do say that, and I say that with pride, that I am a horror aficionado, because I've been watching horror films since I was 4, and I have evolved greatly in that department. And then I started reading horror books at the age of 9, and that's very young to say that I was reading horror. And trust me, I had good parents. They tried to stop me, but I was unstoppable. I just said, no, there's just something about this market that draws me to it. There's just something that calls me to the darkness. And I wasn't an evil little kid. I wasn't, disrespectful, and I didn't write, on walls or do seances in my room or anything like that.
No sacrificial goats in the basement. I'm sorry. I said, yeah, you have to understand. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I have to say this, because when I got into my heavy metal craze and was listening to a lot of heavy metal, my mom got very nervous. I said, Mom, I'm not sacrificing goats in the basement. Don't worry.
It's funny that you say that, because my music taste got very dark around the age of 17, and my mom was quite concerned then. Should I be worried? You're wearing black pleather pants and black lipstick. Is there anything you want to tell me? No, Mom, don't worry. The cats are fine. So I completely can relate and understand that.
I'm sorry. I love that. I love that response. That is priceless. I'm sorry. It reminds me of my friend whenever his parents were leaving their house for like a day or maybe a weekend, and he and his brother were basically being left in their apartment for the weekend or something. They said, just don't set fire to the couch and don't break the TV. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are certain things your parents are concerned about. No,
yeah, absolutely.
Fine. That's what I love about these kinds of conversations.
Yeah,
you never know where they're going to go.
Exactly.
But yes, I do watch other content creators that are not specifically horror centric. However, again, I tell you that those are very specific individuals that I find personally are very well-rounded, but still offer a great deal to the horror community. So Stacy is one of those. You know, Stacy has really gravitated towards horror a lot in the last year, but she can be all over the place too. She's talked about many different subjects on her channel. She reads other types of books. She reads, oh goodness gracious, her stupid Scottish romances, you know. I can't relate to that. When she talks about that, I'm like, oh, here she goes again with her Scottish romance. But, you know, for me, I have, since evolving into the horror genre and being exposed to other YouTubers or booktubers, and just authors and writers, editors, publishers in general, I found that I'm a lot more driven to people on the dark side because it helps me in my own personal growth. So I mean, when we look at our use of time, that's something people talk about a lot. You know, time is precious. Where do I want to kind of divvy up my time, especially when you're trying to balance work and a personal life and you know, a YouTube life? Because let's face it, if you are a continual creator on the YouTube platform, this becomes part of the clock. You know, where do I have time to fit this in? Because editing takes a long time. And so when I go and I sit down in front of YouTube and I want to watch creators, I want to know what movies are coming out, what people are getting excited about, what people are reading. I do spend a considerable more amounts of time on the Instagram platform because it does help me connect with authors and writers. And so I kind of have an idea of what's coming out in the coming months. And this is something I never thought I would really get involved in. But just in the past few months, I've been kind of diving into NetGalley. And that is something I've actually stayed away from because I don't really care about reading a book so far ahead in advance. I'm not the type of person that I want to say, oh, I read it first. You know, I've never been in competition like that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of seeing what to come and what people, because I found that a lot of times horror, and maybe this is the case, I guess, now thinking about like contemporary novels and stuff, you do start to see a pattern or a trend where if something is pretty popular, then you're going to see a lot in that subgenre. You're going to see a lot of similar covers. You're going to see a lot of similar writing. I think what's coming up big for the horror community in the coming months is mental health focus, about bringing in that into writing. I'm seeing a lot of that coming for 2020, but in a way that it's raw, and that's going to be really exciting. So I think in terms of that, I'm just trying to stay ahead of myself. And I'm also trying to, you know, stay true to myself in the sense that I do want to still incorporate segments that are very specific and tailored to me, where, like, say, for example, I'm talking about Funko Pops, but this time let's just talk about horror Funko Pops that are coming out, you know, and just try again, staying within my niche, but staying true to myself, because let's face it, I'm still going to collect these plastic toys.
Yeah, I definitely see that my love for Funko Pops, I mean, it's still there, but I'm not buying as many as I used to. I mean, it was funny. Today I actually went to a Hot Topic and they had the brand new Invader Zim and Gur exclusive at Hot Topic. And I was saying to myself, ooh, I want to get it. I love these guys. I want to get them. And then I went to the store. There were a bunch of them there. I picked up a box. I looked at it. And I put it back on the shelf, and I said, no, I don't want it. I have 2 Invader Zim Pops. One of them is Zim and Gur on the pig, which is without a doubt one of the greatest Funko Pops that they ever made. But no, I decided I didn't want it. So I just walked away, which I felt very proud of for myself. But yeah, in February, I'm going to lose my mind because the Fantastic Four line is coming out and they all look fantastic. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to harp on based on what you were saying earlier. One of the few things that was kind of funny was it took my parents a very long time to actually understand and embrace the fact that I am a collector of a lot of physical media. And I've actually had a conversation with my mother very recently about how physical media purchasing is a lot more cheaper than what streaming is going to be after HBO Max comes, because basically people are going to be shelling out money every single year to rent their favorite movies and not own their favorite movies. It's like I keep saying, it was like the perfect example was a show that my mother actually watches, which shocks me to this very day. I cannot get over the fact that my mother watches Stranger Things. I love her for it, but I can't believe she watches it. But I said to her, think about it this way. Right now, if I take a look at my Netflix bill, it's going to cost me about $150 to $160 a year to rent Stranger Things. If I went out to Target just a couple of weeks ago and I got the new Blu-ray/DVD combo and I paid $24 for that, if I cut Netflix tomorrow, I never have to pay another dollar for that Blu-ray set rather than rent that movie. I mean, like, I'm looking at Disney Plus right now, and I'm hearing how some people love it, but there are some people that are absolutely disgusted with it. My Disney Plus is back there. There's my Disney Plus. All the Disney stuff that I want and I love, I own. Because if I really was like the diehard fan of DuckTales or Chippendales Rescue Rangers or any of the Disney Afternoon, I would have bought those DVDs years ago. It's showing me that some of those things that I truly love are things that I just didn't really think I loved as much. I mean, everybody was excited that X-Men the Animated Series is now on Disney Plus. Well, you want to know something? I have all 5 seasons right over there, and I'm watching them right now. And I can watch them whenever the hell I want and not worry about a disconnection with the internet.
You know me and Disney. I love Disney. I am a Disney child. That is all I did growing up. But I have yet to subscribe to Disney Plus, and for that very reason, because everything I ever want to Disney, I own it. I have it on DVD, I have it on Blu-ray, or I have it in a box set somewhere. Yeah. I think that where the nostalgia in me is coming in is being able to stream shows that I haven't seen in years, like even Stevens, you know, things of that nature, where I wouldn't have necessarily went out and bought the box set, but it's kind of cool to see it. Boy Meets World. I know you have all of them, but I don't. Like The Simpsons, it would be kind of cool to go back and watch some episodes of The Simpsons that I missed. But to me, it's not worth it. It's not, right now, it's just not worth it in terms of asking myself, how many streaming services do I want? How many do I need? And I'll be honest, I do currently have Netflix, but the only reason I have Netflix was initially so I could watch our documentary on Funko Pops. That's when I resubscribed to Netflix.
That's a wonderful documentary. You know how many times I've watched that documentary? Oh, yeah. I think I've watched that documentary over 50 times already. I can't stop watching it. It's so good.
Wow.
I wish it was on DVD, to be honest with you.
I've watched it.
No, I can't. I watch it. I watch it to feel good. And right now, you just reminded me. The 3rd season of The Toys That Made Us just premiered on Netflix. I need to start watching it because one of those episodes is dedicated to Ninja Turtles, and another one is dedicated to Power Rangers.
Oh, awesome. See, that's another thing. My Power Rangers. Oh, take me back to Saban days and I will talk Power Rangers all day with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's why I find certain streaming services, and I think that's why they are so popular, is because people find the one thing that they can identify with and that they don't mind paying that money so that they can watch it over and over. But I've stayed with Netflix because it's enabled me to watch certain horror flicks that just kind of pop up on a whim that are kind of like, as they say, straight to DVD kind of movies that I wouldn't be able to just go out and find anywhere. So in order to, again, stay up with the horror community, I've kept my Netflix so I can watch these things that just kind of come in, like Stephen King's recent adaptation of his novella In the Tall Grass. I watched that, and that having that streaming service enabled me to just go watch it and be done with it.
Well, to expand upon the actual topic today, sorry that we all trailed off, everybody, but this is why Cammie and I do all these live shows. We just talk about so many awesome things. Yeah, I mean, I know that there are some out there who are friends of mine in the community that classify me as a booktuber, but obviously I don't actually do what the typical booktuber does. But books are a major part of my channel in different capacities, and I personally do watch a lot of booktubers, and the thing that actually gets me really excited is when a booktuber talks about a book that I just read or a book that I'm currently reading, because I'm dying to hear what they have to say about it, and I want to voice my opinion. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for booktube, I wouldn't be the current reader that I am now. When I was younger, I wasn't a big fan of reading. When I got older, I started to find my own personal reading niche. Obviously, we're talking about niches today. And when booktube came around, I had just gotten my master's degree and I wanted to finally get back into reading. So if it wasn't for this community, I wouldn't be reading. I never would have discovered Marissa Meyer. I never would have discovered Brandon Sanderson. These are now two of my favorite authors right now. Brandon Sanderson, I am head over heels for his work because I just love how he writes books. It's beautiful. It literally is like I'm watching a movie when I'm reading his books. And me go to BookCon? What were the odds of that ever happening? You know, I'm actually going back next year, and I'm really excited to. Part of me is kind of hoping that you and Stacy will be joining me, but we'll see when that happens.
I think that's very possible. Stacey and I were actually talking about it because we went to BookNet Fest this year, and we were both looking for more of a book type of convention. You know, we were able to connect with a lot of creators, which was the best part of that whole experience. But in terms of an actual book feeling, you know, like where you're going and you're looking at books and you're checking out stands and stuff, I think for us that did. So it's very, very possible you will see our faces there this year.
Well, we'll definitely have to discuss other things while we're there. Unfortunately, I only go one day. I don't go for both. But one of the few things that I must do is if I finally actually get to see the both of you. I mean, I've already met up with Stacy twice because I go down to where she lives, and I'm going to be seeing her again, hopefully, if me and my wife are able to get back down to DC. But one of the few things that I have to do with the two of you is I have to get you guys to one of the hidden gems in the city, or at least give you both the opportunity to try something in terms of New York food staples. I can't let friends of mine leave New York without trying something food-wise that is truly New York authentic.
Oh, well, I am definitely going to be a guinea pig then because I've never been to New York and I know nothing of all this great New York food and delicacy that you speak of. So
Oh,
I want
trust
to
me,
try
you're
the
in for a
pizza
treat.
and the all the fun stuff.
Yeah, if you enjoy your meat, you have to. I will bring you to a place where you can get a true, authentic Jewish deli corned beef sandwich. You have to have that. You can't leave New York without having one of those. That's the definite.
Oh,
But and also there's an amazing donut place. But let's get back on track here. We're gonna get into the next question, and that is your specific niche is an even more specific niche because as we have been discussing throughout this entire episode, you know, horror is still very, very small, especially when you take a look at everything else out there. I mean, I think one of the most hilarious things, and it happened, I think, maybe 3, possibly even 4 years ago, when the Oscars actually did a segment that tributed to horror. And I was like, that's very interesting because the person who basically presented the presentation said, we have to remember that horror movies are movies too. So let's thank them, which I thought was really nice to see. So it's a very small niche. So my question is, at this point in time, what do you feel about horror's growth opportunity, especially on this platform or just in general?
Well, I'm already seeing such a significant growth this year alone. I've seen more new booktubers come out talking about horror in terms of not only as a entire platform, but even just incorporating it. Even you know, looking at readathons and those types of selections for this year. There was more this year than I had seen ever before. And before I even got on this platform, of course, I was watching videos, book related and so forth, but I didn't really immerse myself into what is considered the booktube community until I was actually in it. And I didn't even realize I was in it until a couple of videos in. I'm like, oh, what is this platform that I have just stepped into? You know, I really thought that something that I was planning on doing was a very new thing. I didn't really think people were out here talking about books, and then come to find out they've been talking about them for 5 or 6 years at that point, you know. So to see more people talking about it is incredible because it does show that it is definitely making an impact. And like you were saying, that was the first time the horror movie industry had been recognized at a really high advanced level. So it goes to show you that it is making traction, it is making leeway. It will always be something that has to fight in terms of recognition, because no matter how good a movie is, it's always going to get snubbed at the Oscar level. That is just such a hoity-toity community of filmmakers. But I think that for books and in terms of creators, I think we're going to start to see a lot more people being less afraid to talk about what they love, and not just necessarily in the horror community, although that's where my heart is. I think that a lot more people are getting comfortable finding themselves regardless of what their niche is, and not being afraid to step outside their comfort zone and feel that they have to necessarily fit in with a particular group of people. Because myself, especially, and I will only speak in terms of myself, and I'm sure other people probably do feel this way, when they entered into this community for the first time, there's an overwhelming sensation as a booktuber to read what everybody else is reading, to have the book that everybody else is holding up in a video. So you kind of get sucked in as a consumer, and you find that you're buying these books that you have no interest in, and you're trying to fit into these readathons and these read-alongs just to get to know people. And that's fine for a little while, because you do kind of find your people within that, mess of things that you really don't fit in. But at some point you have to ask yourself, who am I, and what am I doing here? What do I want to do here? And once you do that, and you're not afraid to do your own thing, and you're not afraid to say, hey, this is the kinds of books that I read, this is what I like. And don't get me wrong, I don't just read horror. I read all kinds of books, but I predominantly read horror. So I'm not going to be afraid to talk about it. I'm not going to be afraid to share that with everybody. And I'm going to say, hey, if you haven't done it, talk to me, talk to me in the comments, direct message me on another social platform. Let's talk about horror. Tell me what your fears of it are. Tell me what you like to read. Tell me what else you like to read, and maybe I can find the perfect horror book for you. So I think that seeing the community grow is going to be something that we will definitely be seeing in the year to come, because people are reading horror at a really alarming rate, and it's being written at an alarming rate. It's incredible what's coming out, and it's not even 2020 yet.
Yeah, and as I had been saying to you so many times when we've talked together, which is the main reason why I really hope that one day we will get that horror live show discussion out there on your channel, and hopefully it won't be just the two of us. Like I said, nothing would make me happier than to talk horror with you and Joni and Stacy. Like, I just think that we can have an amazing conversation. But you're absolutely right. You're seeing horror. Will it ever win an Oscar like Best Picture? I'm going to say probably never. But I would like to see some of these movies get, some accolades for things like screenwriting, because I still say, even as someone who's not a horror fan, I have seen some movies in the last couple of years that are horror films that are very well written. I thought that A Quiet Place was absolutely brilliant. And I think that that movie should have definitely been nominated for a screenwriting film. I mean, the fact that Jordan Peele got that Academy Award for Get Out, which was such an original take on horror mixing with politics. I haven't seen Us yet, but I definitely am planning to do so. The fact that Fantasy Island is going to be a movie, and it's going to be a horror movie, not based on what it technically originally was on television. They're taking a television show and adapting it into a horror movie. That's a risk, especially to people who used to watch that show. But it shows you that there's something about horror that gives people more room to breathe. It's not necessarily something that's cookie cutter anymore. The fact that we take a look at films like the MCU films or the Disney animated classic films, ironically, it mostly falls into the category of the Disney company. They have a specific standard and a specific formula that they have to follow, or they truthfully feel that their movie is not going to make the money that they want to make. But you want to know what's really funny? The more a movie steps out of the box, if it gets the right marketing team behind them, It will get the viewers, it will make the money. I say last year there was an incredible film that came out and it barely got any publicity. I didn't even see advertisements for it. It was a science fiction thriller called Upgrade. It was incredibly done. And if it wasn't for the YouTube community of film talking about that movie, I never would have known that it even existed, and I wouldn't have even seen that it was playing in a theater right near me, and I went to go see it, and I thought it was fantastic. I just wish that these kinds of films would get more publicity because they need to understand that there is really great writing in here. I mean, take a look at the two films right now in the box office that are making the most money. Joker and Jojo Rabbit. You can't get more outside the box than those. Meanwhile, Charlie's Angels was a bust.
I kind of figured that was going to be a bust, though. I mean, there's certain films that Hollywood needs to stop trying to remake. There are classics that you can't touch, and there's actors and actresses that did them so well the first time around, don't even bother to try to do it. And so for me, Charlie's Angels was not even a thing. I had no desire whatsoever to watch that.
Yeah,
But in terms of horror and film, I wouldn't say never. I never say never because you don't know what's coming. The future of filmmakers is always evolving. The future of film is always evolving. So there's always a possibility that someone will create something that will just knock the socks off of the Academy Awards and they will eventually win an Oscar. So who knows? You know, it could come. To say it's far-fetched, absolutely. But when you talk in terms of directors, rather, like Jordan Peele, like you had mentioned, that is completely revolutionizing the horror industry. That's giving us a new kind of fright. That's giving us a new kind of scare. And so when you can continue to do that and create something that no one has ever seen before and give us something that we weren't expecting and be legitimately frightened, then that's saying something for horror movies. And I think that's happening in horror writing as well. You have authors like John Bowden and Chad Lutzke, people that, of course, if you're within the horror community, those names are very palatable for you. But in terms of someone like yourself that don't really read horror, you're like, I'm not sure who that is. Well, guess what? I can put a Chad Lutzke or a John Bowden in your hand. Guaranteed, if I don't tell you they're horror, you wouldn't even know that. There are certain authors that are labeled within the genre that really are getting the short end of the stick because they would appeal to so many people. Those are two incredible authors that I wish more people would read. But some people are genuinely afraid to pick up a horror novel because it's labeled as such. That is why it is so important for me to drive the horror message, that there is legitimately horror for every taste, for every like, for every palette out there. And not everything is going to literally scare you. Some things are intended to be like real life. Chuck Wendig's The Wanderers. Oh my God, incredible book, incredible story. And it gives you the last 15 years of epidemics and plagues and just the crazy stuff that happens in real world and brings it to the forefront and makes it seem like, holy crap, you know, could this really happen? And I really want more people to not be afraid to try new things and to read new authors, because there are stories that are just so riveting and soul wrenching and gut wrenching, and they really speak to you on so many different platforms. And I'm so excited for all this mental health horror to come out, because Krista Carmen, who I read a book for a readathon this summer for the Bloody Beach readathon, she had a poem. It was a book of poem that we read for her book is Something Borrowed, Something Blood Soaked. And when I read it, I thought, oh my God, this is revolutionizing. This is something that I have never read in horror before. This is a woman who is writing in terms of her own pain, in terms of her own trials and tribulations. And she is adding an element of a real thing that could potentially cause horror within yourself, you know, this whole clouded mind and the dealing with your own personal horror. And so I just think in terms of horror as a whole, you're going to see some incredible things in the next couple of years, because people are starting to chip away at the ice block that they've been hiding behind or within for a long time.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you've mentioned mental health a couple of times because that's actually a topic that I really want to discuss on an episode of Sunday Sit Downs next year because of the fact that I am someone who is a firm believer in the fact that we are not spending as much as we should be focusing on the ways that mental health works and the fact that we need to try and find other ways to address the situation and handle the concept of mental health for everybody in general. I mean, as I always say, if I knew where my tax dollars were going to, or if I had the opportunity to point my tax dollars in a specific direction, it would go to education and mental health research. Those are the two places where I feel that my money should go to. But I think that next year will be a very big year for science fiction in film because of the fact that we are getting a remake, unfortunately. But fortunately, I think it was a remake that we needed, and that is Dune, the Frank Herbert novel. The fact that it's being directed
Oh
by
yeah.
Denny Villeneuve, who gave us an Academy Award for Best Picture nominee in Arrival and an incredible sequel to Blade Runner, which some people wondered why is it even being made. And quite frankly, I think that Blade Runner 2049 is 10 times better than the original Blade Runner. But that's also because I realize I'm not a fan of Ridley Scott films, but that's just me. But you've got everybody from Timothy Chalamet to Jason Momoa in this new incarnation of Dune. And I feel that if they do this right, it's going to change the science fiction genre in film forever. So let's get into the last question. And that is, where do you think that things are heading in terms of big corporations and media companies, especially considering the fact that Google does own YouTube at this point? They're pretty much taking over the platform. Where do us niche voices lie in the future, and will we still have this platform to do great things and introduce people to these specific types of genres and other niche ideas?
I think as long as YouTube continues to let creators create, and I know that that sounds like a generic response to your question, but there are so many rules and regulations that we have to follow as creators, and we do so, and we're constantly fighting the system, constantly saying, I did everything you asked me to do. I worded everything the way you wanted me to word it, and you're still nicking me for this, that, or the other, or you're still demonetizing my video, or you're blocking my video, or what have you. So I think that creators will be able to get over big corporation, but big corporation runs the world. That's what we need to understand. They run our media, they run the way that we speak, they run every facet of it. So we're just pawns in a much larger system. What we need to do as creators is we need to understand our place setting in this environment, and we need to know that we are one of millions of creators, and we need to just continue to stronghold and powerhouse through all of that red tape. We need to be confident in the material that we're creating. We need to be passionate about it. And when you do that and you create this market and you allot for your identity to be not labeled, because I hate labels, but when you put an identity out there, at least for a marketability purpose, then you allot for people to kind of test your ideas, and in that they can identify with you and they will trust you. And when you build that relationship and that trust with your audience, then you will have your mark. I mean, people can only keep you down for so long. I mean, even with the people, and I say the people, but what I'm talking about is in terms of the major YouTube creators that have had problems in the past where YouTube has told them, I'm going to remove your video, or I'm going to, mark it as demonetized, or whatever stigma that they put on the video, making it harder for that creator to put that content out there. But if they powerhouse through that and they show that, hey, I've done all of this right, at some point there's nothing left to argue there. So all they have to do is just say, okay, you did it all, and we apologize. They might not necessarily give you back your viewership time, or you don't get the likes back or anything like that, but at least you can start over from that platform. So you just have to be able to get through the struggles. Sometimes it's about kind of getting that thick skin about you and just forging forward and just saying, hey, you know what? I think that I have a place here. I feel that I have a message to be heard. I think that I have content that people really should hear. And I've just got to go about the best way of doing that. And a lot of the times it's just staying positive. I think we get so wrapped up sometimes in being angry about the big man and the push to keep us down. But you have to just kind of ignore that sometimes and say, okay, that was just a barrier in the road. That was just a fork in the road. So do I still feel like I have something? Do I still feel as passionately about this? Do I still feel like I have something to talk about? If I do, okay, let me get up, brush it off, and move forward. And you just have to keep moving forward to get your voice heard. And for some, it's easier than others. In a case like mine, yeah, it's going to be a big uphill battle because horror is kind of at the bottom of the totem pole. A lot of people are still unsure about what it means to read horror and what horror is about. And there's always that comparison of horror movies to horror books. And so it's a constant retelling. Sometimes I feel like a broken record of just saying the same things over and over. But it's really just putting yourself in a place of factability and saying, hey, you know what? I've got something here. I've done my research and now I want to share it with you. And so I can get through the big Google platform. I can get through the big YouTube market. And in the case of like publishing companies and stuff, I feel like a big competitor for me is Amazon. I feel like I'm always competing with the Amazon platform to get indie authors recognized and indie publishers recognized. Because as someone who is a constant pusher of people that independently publish their own material, I want to make sure more money is getting into the hands of these creators. So I feel like I'm always trying to do research to overcome the big corporate hurdles.
Right.
And there's a lot that goes into it. It can be very tiring and frustrating at times, but you just have to believe in the process and you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I agree, and you're absolutely right. I mean, unfortunately, it's a business now. YouTube used to be this free-for-all place, but then, when a corporation got a hold of it, now it actually wants to turn it into something that's regulated, do things that are their way and not necessarily the other way. I mean, I love the whole topic of the fact that now there are politicians who are running for president that want to break up these big tech companies, and it's funny how they're all like, for them, but at the same time, they're afraid of them because they're actually going to ruin their businesses. It's an interesting war that's happening right now. But, there are those people who get that silver play button when they get 100,000 subscribers. But are they really going to give that award to Jimmy Fallon if his channel got those subscribers? I really hope that there are still some mannerisms that YouTube will hold for the sake of letting the independent creators know that your voice is still here, your fan bases are hearing it, and we will reward you for your accomplishments. And I feel that, like you said, as long as we just keep doing what we love to do here, we will be okay. That's the way I feel. And, the most important thing that I want is the fact that when that day comes where people like you and I, are ready to pass the torch to the next generation of content creators, I'm just hoping that those content creators will be as passionate and as excited to share their interests with the world, because that's why we came here and that's why YouTube is what it is. And that pretty much wraps up another Sunday Sit Down, everybody. Cami, I just can't thank you enough for joining me today. I mean, you and I have way too much fun when we are having a stream together, and you do know that nothing would make me happier for whenever the next one arrives, whether it's on my channel or whether it is on your channel.
Well, I definitely foresee what you've mentioned many times in this segment, our collaboration on talking about horror movies. That will be coming up. More than likely, it'll be 2020 because I had so many technical issues this year. But you'll be excited to know. I guess I'll just make the announcement here on your channel that I'm actually going to be creating a second channel in 2020.
Oh, okay.
So I have decided that I am going to create a kids content channel once again, but it is going to be nothing but kids content. Thank you. I'm excited about it because I feel that that will allow for me to still do a niche that I love, which is kids content, but from a complete spectrum, and not feel like I have to hide anything back from my audience or hold myself back from talking about it. But I will, like I said, be making a kid segment on Cammie's Corner. And so with that, it will tie into the whole horror and dark element. So that will still be very much a part of what Cammie's Corner is. But I will be starting a kids corner in 2020. So I'm excited to get that up and running and just expand on that. And you're going to be seeing a lot more in terms of horror movies from Cammie's Corner also in 2020, because I feel that that is something that it's been sitting on me for a while. I've been really wanting to talk about it, but just trying to find a forum for it. And I have you to thank for that, because you got me back into rewatching movies that I haven't watched in a while. So I'm going to be talking horror from the inception to where we are now. And it's going to be fun to watch.
Well, on the kids channel, I'm hoping that there will be some episodes dedicated to Dr. Seuss and Berenstein Bear books, because those were some of my ultimate favorites growing up as a kid. Okay, well, that's it, everybody.
Don't forget about Shel Silverstein.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much once again, Cammie, for joining me today. And thank you all for watching, everybody. It is always a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to the final episode of 2019's season of Sunday Sit-Downs in December, when we have another great topic to discuss. But most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, another great YouTuber to discuss it with. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.